bunch of money.
Because it doesn't let it go.
Oh, because it's frozen.
That's a good one, but that's not the answer.
What was the joke?
But no. I'm very extreme.
Because everything goes goofy.
My sister told me how?
How can you tell when Mr. Hill's been using the computer?
Your eyes are glued to it. The other
It crashes.
I know you knew that, but okay.
Grady,
Yeah.
Mary E, Addie, Mary M, Maddie T, Cooper,
Hola.
Matt, Ava, Aiden,
Minus 31.
Celine, Mia, Emily, Isaac,
I need my stuff.
Maddie P, Laura, Lucas, Kennedy, Jack,
86.
James,
And I never even done my
Isaiah, Julie, Avery, Ellen, Natalie, Aaron,
You're at the top of the food chain. It's just gonna be like, you get him first, then you get the rest. Like, it's just like this. All of you just sitting there. Why are they all turning towards
you can correct your test, but you're not getting any points for that. If you want to get a higher score, you have to retest, which means you have a week from today to retest. If you have a question on the first page, raise your hand.
If we have a question on what?
The first page.
Jax.
Oh, number 5.
Number 5, the food source that they did not have to cultivate because it grew by itself is wild rice.
Oh,
Wait, which one was that?
Oh, I thought it was.
I thought it was beans.
I put squash.
Oh, I thought it said
Number 6, all the following were goods received from European trade companies except B. There's the ones that were given to European trade companies.
I put B at first and then I put D. Alright.
What was
Isaiah,
7?
the European nation that dominated trade
France.
Germany.
is France.
Okay.
I remembered that one too and I was happy about it. France.
Number 25.
Men's job was to hunt and what? Fish, not
Oh, great. I put
farm.
shoe.
That
That's
was
the only
women's
thing I got
work.
wrong for the true and false.
Isaiah,
3.
the majority of Ojibwe and Dakota lived in woodland areas.
Wait, what was 35? Huh?
I thought it was that straight.
The Ojibwe originated on the eastern coast.
Number 1's A.
number 1
Wait, we can't
is
do corrections or we
B.
can do corrections?
I knew it.
Dakota always have been here. Yeah,
I didn't get it.
What's number 2?
we just said that one, the eastern coast. Yulee. The conflict between the Dakota and Ojibwe was mainly the result of competition for hunting, C. And also what we're studying this chapter, which is what? The fur trade.
Wait,
Other questions on page 1?
how do you do test corrections?
8 and 16.
You should just have to read.
The seasoned syrup is obtained as the spring.
Or we just redo the entire test?
And 16, they both made sugar from maple sap.
Where's 32?
We're only first page right now. Anybody else on first page? Natalie? 9? First to write the book is William Warren. Julie?
17 through 19.
17, hollowed logs were the Dakota, the Sioux were called the Dakota, and Anishinaabe or the Ojibwe.
Wait, what was
Ava.
35?
What's 35? What's 35?
We're on the flip side now. Flip side, 35. First thing you do is test the tree to see if the sap is running. Second thing you do is you pound wood chips into the tree cuts. Third thing you do is collect the sap in dishes. Fourth thing, you pour it into troughs or clay pots. And the fifth thing, you just boil it. So it should be 3, 5, 2, 1, 4. I only counted 1 point apiece on those. All your other questions counted 2 points apiece.
Oh, what are the bonuses? I'm just curious.
What
A lot of
name
people
is
got
it?
the first bonus, which is the Wendigo.
I said the Yeti.
The Wendigo.
I said Shrek.
Did you actually?
Charles Eastman Native American name was Ohiasa.
I said Obibi Kajua.
I think one person or two may have got third. The animal the Dakota considered better tasting in the winter is the muskrat.
For number 1, I put Shrek. For number 2, I put Bigfoot. And for number 3, I said Bison.
I said Yeti,
Even
Habibi, Kajua,
after-
and Bison.
Yeti. I put.
I said make sure you pay attention to that word describe on the essay. How do you know? We said, how do you know if you've described?
You gave different.
Answer what question?
You would see why.
Why? So Lottie said, Lottie, you put the things, well, the Dakota taught the Ojibwe how to hunt buffalo. That's not describing it. Describing it means that is culture diffusion because hunting buffalo was part of Dakota culture, and they shared that part of their culture with the Ojibwe. And the same is wrong with 2. 2 things you think we should learn. So in other words, you're telling me why you think we should learn that, whatever you put down. Most of you didn't say why you think we should learn it. Okay? You didn't really say why it's important. What would make it so important that we need to learn it? Okay? And a lot of you put things that we already do or know. Okay? Telling stories, that we already do that.
How do you do test corrections on these tests?
I said you cannot do, you make corrections now to help you study if you want to take a retest.
Ah, I see.
And for a retest, then you grab one of the forms. You do 3 of the things that you're going to do to improve your score. And then you set up a time between now and what?
Next week.
Next Monday. To retest.
Okie dokie.
And give me at least a day to come up with another test. Or to get a copy of another test that I have. Okay? So I know when you're doing it, I can have a copy ready.
Nicholas.
And again, you could have had lots of help on this, but some of you didn't use the extra help. What's the extra help you could have had?
A Venn diagram.
Diagram, and I said what you could put on that sheet. Anything.
I forgot to print it.
So basically, you could have wrote any note you wanted.
I'm having chicken noodle soup for dinner.
No. No Venn diagram on a retest.
Now you guys are talking about soup.
You can use it to study from, but not on the test. Okay?
Why'd you ask?
Any other questions? So we're learning then about the fur trade. Okay? And we said part of the fur trade had to do with why did it start in the first place? Who can tell me why it started in the first place?
Because they didn't know what to do with all the other furs that they were getting.
The fur trade was going on before the white man came. Who was doing the trade?
France. Dakota.
France and England are white men.
Indian.
Okay? The Native Americans were trading amongst themselves for things that they had in their area. The white men started the trade. Why?
To make money.
To make money.
Big brain.
Part of it was because the fur trade actually started in Europe. Primarily what country? My wife was walking through the airport one day, and she likes to have these furs. She's wearing a fur hat. And a guy came up to her and said, you know, you look just like, she thought she was from Russia.
Welcome to the mother.
Yes.
Welcome to
But
the
he was a furrier.
A furry.
A furrier is somebody
that kills
that
birds.
takes furs and makes them into things.
Furry suits.
He's a
And he could tell by the fur hat that she had, that she bought at a thrift store, she could tell where that came from, just by how it was made. But what happened in Russia is they began to trap too many furs. And so you needed a new market.
They made the
And the original furs, okay, were for coats and things like that. But we said in Europe, the new fashion changed the whole focus of furs.
We want that.
And they wouldn't have even been in the New World, we said, to see the wealth of all these furs, if what? They wouldn't have been in the New World. Except for what? What are you guys even working on?
Paper.
Right here. Explorers. Why were they exploring? We talked about this last time.
Finding trading routes.
So they were looking for a trade route through our country. They were looking for the spices and silks of Asia.
What have I done?
They weren't looking for furs. But they found furs. And they found that furs would make them just as much money as this direct trade route. So we're going to watch this short video on the start of the whole fur trade. So it's going to talk about Russia and why it started. Then we're going to look at some of the things that they traded. So some of it's repeat from the last chapter. Next class we're going to do a simulation. So I'm going to need some volunteers who want to be the traders, and then I'm gonna need some volunteers who wanna be the Native Americans. Okay? So,
I want to be a Native
let's
American.
look at
I
this.
see people incoming.
Let's look at this short video first.
I want to be the Native American.
Me too. Me and Cooper can be Native American. Can we be Russian Native American? I want to be black.
We have to have the horn and go.
Oh, James, push the AV mute button on the.
And then we can be like, incoming!
AVU.
In the bottom left there, AV.
What is that? I think it's a giant pencil. Oh,
Nice.
I want to be a trader.
it's kind of coming towards us. I don't think that's a pencil. Be a wandering trader.
In the early 17th century, there were increasingly industrialized countries, especially in Europe.
Nice
There were
hat.
also vast tracts of land in North America and Siberia that were forests
Santa.
and woods inhabited by huge numbers of fur-bearing animals.
He's so cute. Kill it.
They were an incredible magnet
Hey, it's
for
funny.
Europeans of all
I just said that.
countries because people wanted to
Well,
get these
get New
furs
Year's.
not only for what they could provide, but also for the luxury
Some on the black market.
that they exhibited to the world.
Just like TikTok.
You had people venturing out into the wilderness looking
Shoot them.
for valuable furs like sables and beaver. Anything that had a pelt was swept up into the currents of commerce.
Can I make human pose?
When you look at Siberia, when you look at North America, what you find is
Who wants
what
to
the
be the
Europeans are
test
calling a wilderness.
Leatherface.
The fact is, they're not empty wildernesses. There are people living there.
This European expansion, both to the west and to the east,
My
comes
pistol.
at the price of indigenous cultures. When indigenous people look at the land, they
It's
see
Chrono.
home, they see the place that they're from, the place that they'll return to, the place that gives them life and sustenance every day, a place they can imagine not being with. When the Europeans, in this instance, look at the land, they see money.
Nice
Often
ideas.
encounters did end violently,
They're out like the dawn of day. You're like
and there were many mortalities in the history of the fur trade. But also, in many instances, the fur trappers tried to get along with the natives with whom they had to trade, because in many instances, it was the natives who went out into the wilderness and captured the furs. It's amazing how much of an impact the fur trade had on expanding Western civilization into the wilderness. It was a transformative force.
One of the great commodities coming out of Russia, being fur, is actually one of the economic drivers that allows Peter the Great to build his great capital. It's one of the things that allowed the money to flow into the coffers of the Russian government so that this
Why do I
great
want to
capital
just slap
could
him
be built.
across the face and see how much his face jiggles?
It is not unfair to say that the two greatest powers of the 20th century, Russia and America, both come out of this fur tradition. They are both lands that are very much developed and very much started, given a birth by the fur trade.
Jump.
when you have to pee and you have to go on a road trip. Stopping at a gas station when you go on a road trip. Finally. Quiet in here.
Wow.
Too quiet.
0 turned in, 20 assigned.
0 2. No.
I said no. Turn on the lights.
So, for the fur trade to happen, really for any trade to happen, what has to be true?
Alliances.
They have to have a good interaction with each other.
Okay, what causes that interaction?
Money.
Trade.
Gifts.
So we had the natives on one side, and we had the traders, or the whites,
Can I be a beaver? You want a good shot?
okay, on the other side.
Can I be a duck? Oh my gosh, I want to be an animal health. Oh.
So for trade to happen, you have to have what?
Money.
Strength.
Trust.
Trading.
God. Resources. Children.
You gotta have items that people want to trade.
Like children.
What? I'm pretty sure that's not called trading.
I'll take this.
That isn't funny. Yes, human trafficking is also trade.
Oh, I guess it is.
But it isn't funny. Okay? If you have items that you want but don't have them, but somebody else has those items, and I can offer them some of the items that I do have for those items, then we're both what?
Happy.
We're both happy.
Food.
Okay, and part of this, okay, is this term that tended to happen sometimes. Exploitation, we've had this term before, what's it mean? We haven't had it, then let's write it down. Let's write it down. What does exploitation mean?
To use something or someone against them.
I'm pretty sure that if you're trading them something and they don't know the actual value of the item, they like mark up the value. So they're scammers.
So if you take advantage of someone for selfish reasons, that's exploitation.
So basically.
So trade is not exploitation, okay, as long as what?
You're being fair?
I don't have any. Dang it.
Both sides are what?
Knowing what they're doing.
Happy?
Happy. If both sides are happy, exploitation is not happening. Even though you could say I'm trading for selfish reasons, because I want what?
Better stuff.
I want what you have. And you could say, well, I'm being selfish because I want to trade the least amount I can for what?
What they're giving me.
The most amount I can get. But both sides are trying to do that, right? So let's look at what are the items that they didn't have that they wanted.
Either.
Okay? Raise your hand if you think you know one. Lucas,
Like iron.
who wanted that? Who had that?
Aluminium.
So we're going to put down,
Like iron.
we're going to put down the stuff that they had.
Never had armor.
So metal, who had that?
Traders.
Okay?
White. Cooper did.
Can you put a name underneath the, like a line underneath the traders? It's kind of bothering me that there's one of the natives in that. Thank you. There.
Same with
Perfectly
exploitation.
balanced.
Glass feet.
Who had that?
The natives had like corn and beans.
Well, she make it bing. What the?
She made bro.
Different types of boys to make.
Look in the microwave and she use
The whites traded guns.
What the? They created guns?
No, they
Oh, guns. I thought you said buns.
What kind of guns?
the machine guns.
No.
Muskets.
Like the
They're muskets. Come on. Don't you know anything about that?
Car 98.
Oh my gosh. Actually, he was right. It's about guns.
Just got this new Nerf gun.
What else?
30 minutes.
I've never had a Cooper. We've never had guns.
You guys want this to be an assignment?
No.
Because I'm only having like 2 people participate here.
I said muskets. Be fair.
I said guns.
And the people that are participating properly are the ones that are what? Not blurting out answers, they're raising their hands and getting called on. Aiden.
The natives have fur. Or more fur.
And what are some of the furs that they have? Beaver,
Fox.
fox,
Muskrat.
muskrat,
Bison.
Cow.
Deer.
Fish.
Buffalo.
Deer.
They had buffalo, right?
Oh, they have fish scales.
They had buffalo, right?
Bison.
I thought they had buffalo too.
What are those called?
They sold wild rice too, right?
For instance, basically any wild animal, they had a fur coat.
Oh,
So you get
fish!
raccoons, squirrels, okay?
Birds.
Did they trade sap like the maple
Syrup.
with the natives?
Well, we'll put that, we'll say they had this maple syrup,
They might
Wild
have
rice.
wild rice trades, but they don't have Aiden's dad's
wild rice.
His rice is syrup. It's not syrup.
And you said potatoes weren't part of North America till much later. They were introduced later on. The natives of North America did not have potatoes.
Y'all want some syrup?
Yes. They didn't have potatoes.
Some
Canoes for the natives.
Syrup.
Oh yeah.
Well, we got a big long list for the natives here. We don't. That means the whites don't want to. Don't have anything, huh?
feathers for
They trade feathers like
I love syrup. You know.
I'm trying to see what the traders.
Traders, axes.
S-Y-R. Syrup. Up. Syrup.
Oh wait, whatever.
Shovels?
Metal parts.
Syrup.
Whatever. Shovels for traders.
S-Y-R. Up. That's not how you spell syrup. You spell syrup.
like
Why? Pronounce it. I mean, it was syrup.
The natives traded their nice boats, like the ones that move very
That's
fast.
canoes.
That's not a thing yet. They didn't have those.
It was no.
The traders had buildings. They had still. Did they have like spices?
Muskets aren't any good unless you have what?
Ammo.
Bullets.
Gunpowder.
Yes. Gunpowder was the biggest thing there.
You need gunpowder and you need
Nothing's worse.
A lighter. Just kidding.
The only place they're not supposed
musket balls
Okay, fine. The little place for people to look up here.
or the ability to make them. Well, let's look at some of these items. So I think I passed this around the other day. Or maybe I didn't. Did I pass this around the other day?
I just actually would make some.
Okay. This, again, since it's prepared, we call it a what? A pelt. You can see, I think this is the top of one of the ears.
It's a duvet.
Okay, over here.
Syrup or
Wait,
syrup?
no, an otter.
One here and here.
Syrup or syrup?
Can I guess?
You want to guess?
Otter.
Okay.
Syrup.
Matt, you want to guess?
Beaver.
Matt says beaver. Stand up if you think it's beaver.
Why not?
Wait, two.
Actually, maybe.
It's too puffy.
Okay.
Muskrat for sure.
Beavers are big.
So the people standing up are right.
Yes.
What?
I'm standing up.
That's
This
a muskrat. What
is beaver fur.
I live next to my.
What made the beaver fur isn't this hair up here, okay? This wasn't the important
The
part,
skin.
okay?
The leather.
what they would take is, and I'll pass this around. If you can see it a lot better here on the side. This fur, right down here, is very fluffy and soft. What they do is they have a process to get this fur off.
I don't like soft.
Okay? And that's what's made into the various felt hats. So it's just not the top hat. So, like sometimes you see the soldiers, officers wearing those big curly types of hats.
Like the
Okay,
circle.
those are also made out of beaver fur. The various, basically, they were signs of wealth and prestige.
Is that a bullet
So
hole?
by me having one of these hats, I'm telling the rest of the world what?
I'm
I'm
rich.
cool.
Okay, I'm important and I'm rich.
Why is there a hole?
Okay.
Is that where the bullet
More
went?
rich than you.
Now the other thing that they got from the beaver,
Their tails.
okay,
Teeth.
Their eyes. Their balls.
It makes
is,
soup.
is the beavers secrete a smell. In fact, that's what trappers do to trap the beavers. They take the scent and they put it on the traps. So the beaver cannot smell the human. But in Europe, they took that and added different ingredients and it was made into perfumes. So there were two purposes of the beaver. So if you move this back, you can see the softer fur underneath. So that's primarily what made the beaver more important than the other. So some of these other animals don't have that type of fur that can be made into that felt, in which provided those hats. Okay? Now, we're going to look at, this would be the typical bandolier where the trader would come and keep their trade goods in one of these. We're going to watch a few videos that show how
That's his eye.
let's see, I need a map of the Holy World.
Oh dang! He's fluffy. This is a bullet hole. That's where he
I
died.
almost tried to live right next to my
Actually, we're past.
So they would come down the St. Lawrence Seaway through the Great Lakes all the way to this point right up here. Some of you might have visited this place up along the north shore of Lake Superior called Grand Portage. How many people have been to Grand Portage?
I have.
Okay?
Oh wait, there's a little hole right here.
That's the ear.
Oh, is his
I
ear?
think.
Hello?
That'd be my guess. Unless it's part of where the could be also
I guess it would be
the
Oregon.
legs. Okay? So you had the traders learned that they could get a lot more furs if they came to the Native Americans. So if one trader just came, he's going to have to take all these things back. So they had a group that would send canoes all the way to here, and then you had the Native Americans and the traders that would stay here. So there were two groups really of traders. Some were called the winterers because they stayed over. Okay? And then you had the voyagers who would come, and part of the voyagers would stay the season, and part of the voyagers would come back. So the traders are bringing the goods from the whites here, and then the natives and the traders that stayed here, and they'd have a big, what they call in the summertime, the rendezvous, which was basically a big party, for one thing, but it's also a big period of trade. This would be another item they would trade.
An eggplant.
Anybody know what, have a guess what this is?
It's a horn.
Water bottle.
A buffalo. The bison. It's a can. Isn't it like one of those things that you like?
A wooden.
No.
The bison.
It's a
This also would be carried.
It's a
Okay, that's why it has a strap.
it's a horn.
Why would
I would carry it this way.
Why would you?
Why
It's a
would I be
knife.
carrying it?
Because it's a sheath for a knife.
No,
Is it like a warning call or like a whistle or a horn?
no.
Is it like a thing to hold water?
Now we're getting closer. No.
It resembles to a cat.
Is it like a weapon holder?
It is a weapon.
Dirty waters. It's to hold messages. Is it to hold a banana? Is it a filter for dirty water? Is it like you like go like this and then it like gets a spark?
Oh, you hold gas with it. Oh, gunpowder. Gunpowder holder.
Musket.
Gunpowder
So
holder.
this would contain my gunpowder. When I would be ready, so you have to put a little powder in your musket. Then you push it down, and then you push down a musket ball. And the trigger of the musket basically is the flint. Basically, it just makes a spark, which causes the gunpowder to ignite and causes the musket ball to what?
How does a rocket launcher work?
To shoot out. Okay?
Organ.
No, because there's no I and there's no A. So it's Oregon.
It's Oregon.
There's no E. I mean I.
It's
So technically it would be Oregon. It's not Oregon, it's Oregon.
It's Oregon.
Yeah, but you guys are saying Oregon.
Okay? So here is an example then
An engagement ring.
of
A bullet.
a musket ball.
That's what you use to kill people.
That sounds really sick. The bird's coming our way.
I already touched the fruit. Imagine. No, it's Oregon.
You don't get it.
I used to say Oregon, but it's Oregon.
Oh wow! Imagine getting shot with
Not
this.
Oregon, it's Oregon.
It's Oregon.
Not Oregon.
That's weird.
It's Oregon.
There's the O. There's
There's
the
the
R-E-G-O-N.
You gotta troll me.
No, it's not Oregon. Like she said it's Oregon. I always say Oregon, but now I have proof it's Oregon.
Now,
Oregon.
okay, this then, most Native Americans would make their clothes out of this. So this is a hide that has been
Shape.
taken a lot of work to make it supple enough to move here. And this one, I'm sure it was manufactured. So if you went to buy leather, I used to do leather crafts. That was one of the things we had in middle school. So you can make belts and wallets out of leather. And you buy kits for it.
You buy what for it?
Throw something in the bag.
Oh, kits.
I heard
Mr. Hale, I found something in the bag.
What's in the box?
So that's an example of this too. This is the cloth. So there would be bolts of this, and Native Americans would buy it like you would go down to the fabric store even today.
Now we're
And you
doing
buy big, and then they would what? They would cut it up to make clothes like we have. Okay? This,
It's a pipe.
okay?
a spoon.
So both the whites and
Wait.
the natives would make these out of clay because smoking the pipe and tobacco, again, natives from our region didn't have tobacco, which means they had to what? They had to be traded from other regions,
I want to touch
okay? Because tobacco doesn't grow in Minnesota. But tobacco is very sacred to Native Americans. They would offer tobacco as offerings when they killed animals, and tobacco is also part of their ceremonies. Where they're smoking the pipe among the men.
Oh, I don't
Okay?
like that. Ew.
Is it Oregon or Oregon? Oregon. It's
Oregon.
Oregon.
There's no I.
You want my McDonald's pack?
It's Oregon.
Oregon.
It's not Oregon.
It's Oregon.
Oregon.
There's no A. Oregano.
Mr. Hill, help.
It's not
There's no A or no I, so it's not Oregon. It's not Oregon.
Ooh, a bullet.
Some of you are going off on a tangent. Like,
It's Oregon.
It's Oregon. Not Oregon.
Oregon.
Oregon. It is Oregon. No, it's not.
here's a couple more of trade goods that the whites would have. Now, these are metal. All these are is decorations that sometimes they would pin on themselves. Okay? Or use as earrings. This is how they would buy their glass beads in strings. And the thing about the glass beads that was so
Where are the bees?
one is so valuable to the Native Americans is what?
String.
What can they have? You notice this is only one color.
Die.
So they come in all different kinds of colors.
This one hurts. It's a Barbie table.
Maybe my daughters will let me borrow some of their earrings that they have made. Okay?
I want a dead beaver. What? I want a dead beaver.
Okay.
Most fur traders would have this.
What the heck is that? Compass.
Is that anything crazy, Aaron? Silly putty target?
So
Ew. Ew.
they're usually around in a tin like this. Who thinks who knows what this is?
The way you flame it. Fire starter.
What?
Wait, what is it?
Fire starter. Fire starter.
So this is pieces of hair or strands of wood that you would keep in here. So you'd have a dry part to start.
It looks like it's made out of bone.
You would take, again, the metal, you take a piece of flint, and you would hit it like this to make the spark. We're not going to do that because I don't want to break this.
Burn down the village.
Okay? So do not do this. I'm going to pass it around. But you're going to hold it here and put this, you can get a small amount of this with some other sticks nearby. And this would enable you to start a fire much quickly. Now, this wouldn't have been so important to Native Americans. Why?
They know how to start fires.
Because they could do that themselves. What would help them is that this would be quicker.
Yes.
Normally, Native Americans would start it how?
With wood, sticks.
Okay, with friction.
Magnifying glass.
Using stick and twine that would rub together to increase the heat with friction.
Mr. White, if you didn't correctly with that, would it actually start a fire? Yes, it would. With that, it
What
would.
happens if it's in there?
Wait, that would start it's full of steel.
And we never played Minecraft?
Grady, you know like in Minecraft?
Grady, you go like this. Strikes it and causes sparks, which is nice stuff.
And then it's a fire. And then there's some snow on it.
Oh, two.
What if you blow it in hot paper?
More? Oh, yeah, but
How much
you have
stuff
to
do you
go up.
have?
The whole box.
What? You're gonna pretend to be Popeye.
How heavy is that?
Is there any one of those others?
I started fire with steel. That's why you're
I got married.
Yeah, I know. I did it like
You don't have to make for steel, you have to make
hard.
Just kidding, you just have to make the steel.
No, dude, you just gotta
You don't have to be Popeye.
make this. Just break some ground.
You don't make flint.
It's literally like
Hey, yo, brass knuckles.
Boom.
Who wants to throw hands?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, who wants to throw hands?
Actually, start throwing hands like to the walls.
Everybody seen the musket ball?
Hey, yo, this one.
we have it.
What is it?
Hey, yo, this is the kill zone.
How did it get up here?
Mr. Hill, how much do you want for it?
Oh,
Here, I'll give you my brass knuckles.
they call me Grady.
Oh,
Now, the Ojibwe would have been able to make spoons, but you can tell this one is manufactured. It's a wood spoon. Okay, and again, the advantage of having a metal spoon, these will last longer.
You got whooped with that.
No, I didn't get to see that.
I didn't get the bag.
I didn't get to see the bag.
I want the banana.
Everybody see the beaver?
No, I haven't seen that stuff yet. Me neither.
Here, get the bag. I'm gonna blow it.
Okay, this is a replica, so it's much smaller than it would be, of a war club.
What the?
It's not the thing that they.
It's like a voodoo
Okay.
doll, but without its head.
So you can see that it's been stitched with hide on this outside.
Hey, yo,
And
these
there'd
are the
be a
feed my starving
bone.
children spoons.
There'd probably be a bone or a rock. Okay, a bone or a rock inside of this. So if you got in hand-to-hand combat,
You did drugs.
you would have this. Of course, some of you might have some of these. Okay? This is an Indian arrowhead that's made out of rock. Now again, to do this would take a lot of time.
I give you the
Okay?
weapon.
You're stylish.
Yes.
That's why you'd have to become very good marksmen. Because the amount of time it would take you to make one, to make Indian arrowheads, you don't want to lose those arrows. Okay? When metal arrowheads came, again, that made it much easier. That's another thing they would do.
I've seen a video
So we
of
got
these
two.
explorers.
This one actually I think is a this is the war club. This is a musical instrument. Again, it would still be much. It would be a lot bigger than this. These are just replicas of what they would look like. Each of these then would have significance for that particular person that had these items.
Wait, that's what my grandma beats me with. That's what my grandma beats me with.
Spoon, cousin.
We didn't see this. Anybody not see this?
Yeah. I didn't.
I want that thing for Robert.
Who didn't eat the wooden spoon that grandma beats me with? James.
The beating spoon.
Oh wait.
I made one of these in my backyard.
There's some white beads. You go up and down the rows and everybody.
What's this for?
Killing people. Good boy.
Okay, what's this? Alright.
Why would you keep that? Why would you keep that though? That's the
Minecraft.
I wonder how long it's gonna take for it.
Yeah.
I'm skilled with like rockets.
Can you take a test on me?
I can't take a test on myself. No, that's
No,
not.
can I take a test on you?
Hey, Zee's a friend who is a Dakota,
Wait. Hey, it's my coffee.
made these herself. So,
Sure.
Those
this
are the
part is the
bracelets.
metal, so that they wouldn't have had this. Who thinks they know what these are?
Anklets.
Hey, Peter, that's fine.
What?
Dave.
So these are placed on your arm. Again, it would come up to this part.
And then they put you in the little wood thing and then it's
Again, that was part of the ceremonial dancing that they would do.
He's doing it wrong anyway.
Okay, normally when you trade it, you wouldn't have musket balls like this. They would just have a block of lead. And you'd buy a mold. And the lead would be melted down to make the balls. Okay, so they would be manufactured where you were at. Basically, you can make anything.
I'm not giving that to my grandma.
Makes me think of the Monty Python and Holy Grail thing. What do you mean?
You know what? I turned to the power.
This makes me think of
Let me try
Monty Python and Holy Grail.
If you ask
Oh,
Yep,
God.
and then you just get this.
Why is the bag of rice so interesting?
Elvin, no.
I like all the invisible
Let's think of gadgets. Just imagine pulling that out during like some sort of like,
Hey, stop talking now. Get with me.
Scrooge McDuck. Same thing as Papa.
So what has to happen then is you have to determine value.
Pinocchio had a pipe. What? Anyone ever seen it?
How many aren't with me because you're talking?
Wait.
no.
You're with me when your lips are 3-step process. Step 1 is what? Zip the lip. Step 2, look at the person that's talking. Step 3, pay attention. So what has to happen is you have to determine what the value is. So we're gonna go into this at a disadvantage tomorrow or the next time we meet. The disadvantage is you're going to determine, the natives are going to determine what they want and then what they have to offer. And then the whites are going to decide what? Whether they're going to take what they say. And then the rest of us are going to judge whether you think this was a good deal for the natives or whether it was a good deal for the whites. Okay? Your assignment, to take out a sheet or take out your planners, you should have written down there, finish the Explorer's handout, and then read pages 62 to 65. So right now, you should have read from 57 to 61.
Hell, what year did that take place? Where Texas was its own country? Oregon.
It's on which part of the country.
What if you're from Minnesota? I said it's like the.
Not from Minnesota.
I don't know what they're called, but like you get.
But technically it's spelled Oregon.
I like the chocolate.
I think it's Oregon. It's spelled Oregon.
Take out your planners. I see people not with your planners out. You can't leave until I see you've written this in your planner. We're going to lunch.
Who's playing the intense maraca?
If you don't have your planner out, you're not leaving.
Wait, what? What do we have to write down?
You're going to write finish,
Finish.
Explorer's handout, and read to page 65.
Okie dokie.
If you have not returned my items either, return them please.
Hey, yo, anyone's got a quarter up tomorrow to get my brother's shaker?
Let him get him
Want
himself.
to see the items.
Oh, yeah, I do have $1.
Cooper, let him get it himself.
If
You're
you
the worst
can't
brother.
See the items, you can come in and
Well,
see
yeah,
them.
but he still pays money for those.
Isaiah, did you
And he
get
has to
your
mow
items
my grandma
back?
and grandpa's hill. Because their house is on a hill. And the hill is
I'm
really
so
goes
smart. I did it right on
like
the
straight down.
line.
My brother, and he has to work to get the shakers. And I'm just like, you know, I feel really bad that he has to do that. And one time he was just so tired, he just left the lawnmower like on a slight slant of the hill, and then he just laid on the flat line. I was like, this lawnmower is going down. It's chase after me and I slid on the grass. Absolutely ruined my pants. There was just a grass stain like all the way up to here, and I was like,
I have to see your planner with it written. Don't line up till I see your planner.
I got the lawnmower.
Bye, Freddie.